Good evening, everybody. We're going to do a little mic check here until we figure out what's the right volume for me. I'm a very soft-spoken guy, so I need a microphone sometimes. Thank you very much. Thank you, Steve Ewers, proprietor of this establishment and a very amiable host who has opened up his facilities for any number of nonprofit and community events, and real asset to our community. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Steve. I am Ed Moreno, and I'm the president of the board of the ECIA. I guess it would be president of the El Dorado Community Improvement Association and chairman of the board. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to this very important forum on hens in El Dorado. I have secured the services of a very senior and excellent facilitator and mediator, Mary Davis Hamlin, who is with the Keystone Center, one of the prominent public policy mediation organizations, nonprofit organizations in the country. So I'm going to turn it over to Mary Davis, and then we'll get the ball rolling.
Okay, I am not soft-spoken, so we'll see how the volume goes on this. I really appreciate being here. For those of you who weren't at the March 10th session, I was also had the opportunity to be a part of that session. So since that session, and at the end of that session, and various emails and conversations that folks have had, we have gotten a lot of feedback both about what makes sense around this meeting tonight, how to make this 2 hours best worth your time, how to improve on it compared to the first meeting, and for some folks had advice. And so we have put all of the ideas together and tried to come up with, shape an agenda that makes sense for most of you. And it's pretty simple, actually. We're going to start with some context setting because a lot of folks have been talking to Ed and his colleagues saying, we don't really understand where this is coming from and where it's going to. Let's get it grounded. And so Ed's going to start there and really say why we got here and then where we're going, okay? And then what this meeting is, how this meeting fits into it and where you all head as a community afterwards around this issue. And then we're just going to open it up. We heard from folks at the last meeting that the presentations were excellent, but they wanted more time for the community to speak, have the opportunity to speak. And so we're going to open it up, and I will, if those of you here, I'll kind of move around the room like Oprah does, and give everybody a chance to provide whatever information they want around this issue, why it's important to them. If you have questions where there's a lot of expertise in this room, we'll open it up. Folks can answer your questions, Ed can answer your questions and otherwise. And so it'll just be an open forum so that people can inform, make sure that they have had a chance to talk about their interest around this question. Okay, so it's pretty simple. The only thing I would just add, and I tend to say this at all my sessions, is that especially in public forums, the only way that they work and really are not a waste of folks' times is if people really do commit to respecting the dignity that everyone actually deserves in this room. And so I'm assuming if y'all are here that you're willing to make that commitment so that we can have a constructive and respectful conversation. So thanks for having me. I'm going to turn it over to your president, and then he'll do the context setting, and then we'll open up to you.
Thank you, Mary Davis. Yes. Okay. This is an unusually, well, it's great for musical performances. Is everybody as good as it's going to get? Okay. All right. Okay, this looks like a little different mix of people than we had at the earlier forum. Bill Osher, I'd like to introduce the board. Actually, before I start off, let me raise your hands, Greg Bundrick. Let's see, there's Lynn Mortensen and Pat Lavengood. And I did see Bill Osher. Where's Bill? There you are. Todd. Todd is right there in front of me next. There you go. Is Elan here? I don't see. Okay, okay. Elan has had some family matters to take care of an urgent nature and has been away for a while. Just as a side note, Bill Osher informs me that yesterday there was a meeting to hear from a Senate candidate, U.S. Senate candidate, and there were about 25 people here in this room. So I can tell we have our sense of priorities here. No, seriously, I don't want to make light of it. This is an issue that has been on a lot of people's minds, and when we started out this endeavor, I've gotten a lot of calls. I would say I estimated maybe 100 emails and calls from people. I think that's probably an exaggeration, but scores of calls and emails from people wanting to know what was happening. The questions have been, where's this going? And so I wanted to start off with a little review about where this started. This is a timeline that the board came up with. You can see the date here, January 19th. So in January is when this process formally started, when we created the timeline that is leading us through the steps today. Now maybe some of you remember a document that looked like this, and basically that's what this is here. We wanted to have a chance to, I'll tilt it this way for a while and then I'll tilt it the other way for a while. So we wanted to get organized. How are we going to do this? We decided that we would use February to get organized. We would then have a couple of forums. We realized that with a question like this, the best thing that the board could do for itself and for the community is to learn about the issue and to hear what people have to say about the issue. And so we decided to have two forums. The first one, as you heard, March 10th. This is Forum 2. We have also in the pipeline an online survey that will also be available in paper form. And then in the timeline that we initially started out with, June and July was going to be the time frame when we would get serious about talking about the covenant vote and what would the ballot look like, what would the questions be. And tied to that closely would be a board decision to put the question to the community, and that's going to have its own process when we get to that point. So these which would probably be reversed, I would say. So the next this is not an unusual process. We've done things like this before. We've had an opportunity to. I'm going to turn the flip chart over this way. When we were studying the issue of solar trackers, when we were talking about the amplified music policy at the community center, when we were talking about the construction of a performing arts pavilion, and every time when we had to take it to the community, it was helpful and people learned a lot, and in the end, this is the more important part, that they were able to remain friends, and having had a chance to express their views, to have a chance to be heard as well. Okay. Okay, so, and this is also a learning process. This, in yellow here, information gathering. Some of the that we got was learn the issues to the people. And as part of that iterative process, the ongoing, are we doing this right? Are we on the right track? Is this the right process? I've learned a few things. So here are a couple of things that I want to relate. People want some certain process. When we started out, we didn't know what this part was going to look like. But as a result of a lot of community conversation, a lot of email traffic, ad hoc organizations forming, at least 2 or 3 of them that I know of, and individuals weighing in and having a robust discussion within the community. And all of that has been useful. And that has resulted in a couple of proposals that I'm going to be talking about here. Now, you may not know, but the board as a whole has tried to be really scrupulous about not taking a position. Individuals have been able to express their opinions. Members of the community have also had a chance to express their opinions. We haven't censored anybody. We haven't. And I think by being faithful to the mission that we started out with, that left people with some kind of vagueness in what this was going to turn out like. So what I'm going to do is at this meeting, at this month's board meeting, can I have some water, please? Later. So at the April board meeting, I'm going to propose a couple of things. And I apologize that not every board member has heard all of the details, but the first thing is we are going to continue with the survey as planned before, according to the initial plan. I'm going to ask the board to discuss and to approve a timeline for getting this issue to and this is what the other proposal is. Part of my learning is that what I know I'm not competent to do by myself. And as a group, we may have quite a bit of intelligence on the board, but I think this issue has become enough of a thing for so many people that I think it's worth asking some of you to participate in the process. So I'm going to propose that we convene an ad hoc committee of you to do two specific things, and there may be variations of these 2 things, but 2 specific things that are needed. The first one is to actually design the ballot, what that ballot is going to look like. You know, this is not like lawmaking in the roundhouse, where you have, you know, thumbs up, thumbs down, passes, fails. This is a case where, like, it's amending the U.S. Constitution. It takes a supermajority of states, it takes a supermajority of the people in the states to approve a constitutional amendment, And we have a similar situation here with how we change the covenants. So there are different ways to do it. You could, the revision could say you authorize the board to do something, or you create language that actually defines what a recognized household pet is. Or I stopped counting at about 5 different ways that you could design a ballot question, including thumbs up, thumbs down, you know, just straight up and down vote, and wanting, and we want to get more brain power working on this. The second thing is, and I really don't want to lose this, because there was a lot of great creative energy around some of the ideas that we have been hearing. The notion of a co-op that would be able to secure some land near the stables where there could be goats and cows and chickens and things like that. And there are more out there like that. And so these would be the 2 main tasks. And before the meeting, I'm sure people will be able to come up with some additional ideas that might be a way to both have the benefits of a sustainable life where you can have your fresh eggs, and that also preserves the integrity of the community as the way that most of us found it when we moved here. And that's a real challenge. So this is the proposal that I'm going to be asking the board to look at. Before I turn it over to Mary Davis here, we're going to have a good amount of time to have open forum here. I want to tell you that from the last meeting, we did invite all of the subject matter experts that were here to come again today. And I think some of them didn't come, but we have a luxury dream team of people representing some of the issues that we didn't have at the last team. I'm embarrassing you. So and those were issues around public health, and what are sort of the implications in the animal-human interface. And so we have secured Dr. Paul Edestad, who is sitting over here. He is the state public health veterinarian. Also, we have elder resident Dr. Heidi Hamlin, and she is able to answer questions about goats and chickens and sheep and everything else like that. And also another one of our local veterinarians, Andy Cameron. Sorry, and a regular at our stables, right? Okay, so I guess I should ask for...
Did you want to comment on how just your proposal for naming the committee?
Naming the committee?
Yeah.
The committee is going to be an ad hoc study committee, an ad hoc covenant drafting committee. And it's going to have a limited life. It's going to be in existence for just that particular purpose. And
nominees for it?
Yeah, I was going to get to that in just a second. Yeah. So obviously a lot of people would want to participate, but we want to be really thoughtful about it. We want to have this as broadly representative of the whole community as possible. Now this issue seems to be kind of a duality but in fact there is a spectrum from one side to the other, and I want us to aspire to have a committee that would be able to represent all of the range of interests that are existent in this issue. So what we're going to, assuming this passes, I would invite nominations. You can self-nominate, or you can nominate other people. Sometimes I think it works when I'm not going to impose I wouldn't impose a rule like this, but if you're asked to nominate someone who isn't you, you kind of you can be a little bit more thoughtful about, is this the person that I want representing me on this committee? But self-nominations are going to be fine too. And I think if you make a case, you know, why would I be a good member, or why would you know, you be a good member? Well, because he's thoughtful and collaborative and knows the business, or whatever your particular strength is. And so that's what I'm envisioning, and we'll see what happens. Anything else that I missed? Hold on.
Yeah, we're going to open it up to questions right now. And first, let's have questions just around what he just put forth, and then we'll ask for comments and other things. So I see a couple of hands up here. I'll start with you, sir.
Yes.
If you could say your name.
My name's Robert Johnson. What is this? What is this proposed ballot going to be? Is this going to be "I want chickens"? I don't understand what the ballot's going to be.
The ballot would be like if you're amending a law. So right now it says accept recognized household pets, and the draft ballot language would say replace recognized household pets with recognized household pets including chickens. It could say, or it could just eliminate that exception, the whole exception, and that would be the opposite vote, where you would where it would then prohibit any animal, including dogs and cats. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. My name is Dolores Brock, and I wonder, you mentioned something about a community area down by the stables. Is there property available there? Do we know there is any property available?
There is some. There are some areas down there where it's partly in a floodplain, where there can't be any structures. But there are other places near and around the stables that have been looked at for. That is, some of it belongs to the water district.
Ed,
yes.
I want to go back. My name is Paul Jacobs. I want to go back to the question that Robert asked about the ballot itself. How does the survey, if what you're doing is conducting a survey, and that's the very first thing at the top, how does the survey, first of all, I don't know anything about what the survey is going to include, but would the survey, essentially the information in there, be part of the input to what is going to actually go into the ballot?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, that needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you. Very good.
I guess I failed to emphasize that sufficiently.
Hi, my name is Beth Colson. I'm a lot owner here at El Dorado at Santa Fe. And my question is, would I be correct in assuming that everyone on this ad hoc committee would also be only lot owners at El Dorado here? Those people that are El Dorado, because we have people on committees that are not lot owners. So
I would say so, yes. Yeah, okay. I would support that.
You will make sure that everyone on the ad hoc committee is a lot owner at El Dorado.
I can speak for myself. I would encourage that.
Okay.
I would encourage that.
I'm going to move back here and then back around. Okay, folks?
My name is Rosemary Lowe with Eco El Dorado. Mr. Moreno, you mentioned the draft ballot. Would that then be prepared for a final vote, which would be a changing of the covenants? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yes, that is what he's saying.
Now, I can envision that the committee might want to check with the board or their constituents or generally, they may come up with 2 or 3 options. And so it may not be just one question. There may be multiple questions that would all be on the ballot. Yes. Or not. Or not, yeah.
My name is Mary Cassidy, and I have a question about the committee. How many members will be on the committee? And you've asked people to self-nominate. Who will decide so that it's equally weighted, so that the committee isn't loaded in one direction or the other? How will you make those decisions?
Questions?
Yeah. I'm expecting that the board would have a primary role in doing that, and would want to be in touch with the nominees, and we're certainly not going to dictate, other than the broad strokes, who is on it necessarily. But the board would probably be the ultimate decider of that. You know, a good group, maybe a dozen or so.
Okay, we've got some more comments. We're moving around the room. I haven't forgotten you. Hi.
A baker's dozen, say.
Some of these things need to be sketched out, right?
Yeah.
Okay, my name's Nancy Wood. I'd like to know who will determine if the ballot is fairly crafted.
Who will determine if the ballot is fairly crafted? Can you hold for a minute, or are you just dying? There's just other folks that haven't spoken. That's all.
Yeah. Well, it has to flow grammatically, and with good sentence structure. That's probably. Yeah, I know you're talking about substance. I'm talking about elements. Hold your fire, please. Can you ask your question again? Who?
What person or person will make the final determination that the ballot has been fairly crafted, so it's not lines where you never get a majority one way or the other, or how it's crafted is going to determine the outcome?
I think one of the just in processes that I've worked with, I know a lot of this needs to be played out, but if you pull together a fair and balanced group that has the range of interest and that uses the information from the survey and your neighbors and everybody in the community, they can develop this ballot in a way, and then you can figure out if there's ways to post it for people to see before it's even out. I mean, there are lots of ways that you can do that to make sure that everybody feels comfortable with what you're voting on. Okay, a gentleman over here who's been very patient.
Thank you. I'm Henry Shelton, and I just wanted to ask, I've noticed that a lot of people are out for trying to get on your board, and a lot of them are presenting themselves in positions around issues that are complementary to what you're dealing with. In your timeline of these actions, when is that election going to occur?
Yeah, that's a good question. We considered that. The election is May 3rd. May 4th is the last day for casting ballots. The ballots will be counted over that weekend, and then at the annual meeting, 7 o'clock in the church down the hallway here on Monday, May 6th, there will be the results will be announced by May 7th. I'm sorry.
You'll be in the middle of this process, and you'll probably, the way I see it is, you probably won't have an online survey created by then, nor establish the timeline, but you will have at least a board motion that creates the multi-interest group that would create the draft ballot.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's.
You can get the process principally moving forward.
Yeah.
Okay, back to you, sir.
The practical side of that is that There are 2 open seats out of 7 of a 7-member board, and so that we have 1 incumbent who is running, and 1 vacant seat, and there are 8 candidates. Is that right? 8. And I'll just take this opportunity to plug the candidate forum on April 17th at 7 p.m. in the Railroad Room.
All right, good. More questions? And we can move into comments too. I'll keep moving around the room.
Bob Johnson again. I agree with you absolutely that if this goes forward, we need to submit it to the community. But, you know, and I missed the last meeting. Maybe there's a whole lot of people that support this, but I don't even know that you need a ballot at this point. I mean, are we talking 10 or 15 people that want chickens? I don't know. Has the board made a determination that we need to submit this to the community?
Well, yeah, that's why we're here. That's
I'm going to get some folks who haven't
why
spoken.
we're here, because a proposal was brought forward, supported by many members of the community, and we voted to start this process. Not initially, because we didn't know. We really didn't know very clearly what this was going to look like. We assumed, we had a strong assumption that the outcome was going to be a covenant changing vote, which would be voted up or down. That was our assumption. But until we had more information, we weren't going to take anything else off the table. People had suggested guidelines to interpret the covenants, and that has turned out to be a very unpopular proposal. And what happens if the covenant change fails and we go back to the status quo? What does the status quo look like? So there are lots of things yet to be decided here, but we're on the track.
Okay, so I'm going to stop that back and forth. There are a lot of folks who haven't spoken yet, so if you've already spoken, I'm going to jump over you for a minute.
Rich Goldstein. Ed, if the vote doesn't pass, so the covenant stays the same, are we also going to put in a provision or not? Because right now you cannot grant a variance for poultry. There's no vehicle in the covenants for that. So going back to the status quo, if you intend to keep giving variances, that also has to be addressed. Do you agree?
There have been a handful of variances that were approved, and I was on the board for one of those, and I can explain how that happened if you want to hear it, or if you want to. Okay. Well, you know, what the covenant says now is no animals, birds or poultry shall be allowed on any lot except recognized household pets. And the family came in with 2 little girls who had chickens and had names, and they treated them as pets. They made the case of the educational benefits of having the chickens, and we granted the variance. You want to hear the sad story about this? Shortly after, a pack of dogs got in and killed all the chickens. Okay? Okay?
I'm going to move this on if you
All right.
don't mind. Yes, ma'am. With that picture in your mind.
I'm Judy Spain, homeowner here. Going back to your proposed path forward, the first thing you have on there is a survey. Are you proposing that the board would develop some kind of a survey, and that survey would be sent out? Is that That your idea, Ed?
I'm hoping that if the multi-interest group is okayed, that they can get together in time to help write the survey.
Okay. All right. So the
we've been
multi-interest group would be involved in writing the survey. Then, based on information gathered from the survey, that would help them draft a ballot.
Yeah.
Is that
Ideally, there are some draft questions circulating around already,
okay?
and those would be thrown into the mix as well.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. I see y'all. We've got plenty of time. We can get okay.
My name's Greg Whiteman, and I've lived here 2 years. I'm right here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And one of the biggest reasons I moved here is because we did have covenants, and strong covenants. And I'm with this gentleman back here that waivers got us into this mess. And I think it gets cloudier and cloudier and cloudier as we go. It's going to get real expensive, and especially if there's a lawsuit. And I think a lot of folks are to the point where if the board can't make a decision without sending it over to the Sustainability Committee, who we all know has political interest in this, then something needs to change, dramatically change. This is a simple thing. This is covenants for me, and keeping these covenants. Goats and chickens, I grew up on farms, okay? I have nothing against them, but I didn't buy my property to be next door to them.
I'm going to skip you for a minute.
Thanks.
Ed, is this on?
Yes.
Ed, I first of all just want to compliment your idea on the multi-interest group. I think it's in the draft ballot language. But I have two suggestions to throw out. Number one, a different approach would be to have a room where people show up to. Anybody can show up, and then you put do like the county does. You put 5 of those kind of sheets on the top, and you have like passionately opposed on one of them, passionately in favor, and maybe 3 others in between. And then people declare themselves on these, where you fit on that spectrum, and then that way you can compose the committee. The other thing I'm thinking about is instead of having one draft ballot, like you said, you can come up with all these different possibilities, so maybe you put out as many as 3 or 5, so that way, and then people can vote on those rather than just one.
Good. Some process ideas. Good.
Good.
I'm going to, since I'm right here real quick.
My concern about the survey is that it's online. We talked about this after the last forum.
Mm-hmm.
My concern is that you're going to disenfranchise a whole portion of the lot owners here in El Dorado. Not absolutely everyone has internet savvy or internet access or even is inclined to. So by doing that, you stated to me before you were going to put something written, but that they would have to send it in or bring it in. That I don't feel that adequately addresses the disenfranchisement issue.
Around email. Okay.
Yeah. Well, no. The question is if it's an online survey, what about people that don't use the internet, and how would they be disenfranchised, or how would they be included? What we did with the amenities survey was we put it online and we put it in the Vistas, and the Vistas always has had a relatively weak response rate when we do those sorts of things, and we actually got quite a few responses on the online version. So it's not a perfect process, but I think in this case it might be worth doing something a little bit more deliberate. I would.
More good process suggested. Have gentlemen here, and then I'm heading that way.
I'm Bob Kaiser, and I live in this community. I've lived here for about 11 years. And as a homeowner, I'm very concerned about this issue, primarily from a home value standpoint. And of course, I don't want my home values to be affected in any way. Well, what concerns me is the fact that there are leaders of subcommittees who are not owners in the community who are don't have a vested interest in one way or the other in how things go. In other words, they don't have a property value to contend with. Can you talk about why we don't have a rule that requires them to be a homeowner in order to be a chairperson or a member of a subcommittee?
Yeah.
That's really opening up a bigger question, but do you want to just succinctly respond? And it's already responded that for this particular subcommittee, they have to be a homeowner, a lot owner.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Y'all go ahead then. If y'all want to hear it, it's y'all's meeting.
Well, I'm trying to remember what I read from an email. Someone, you might remember, I can't answer that question right now, but someone, I think a committee member, looked into it, and the definition of a it says a resident, but it doesn't say a homeowner, and that it might open the door for members to not be homeowners. That's as far as I can go. I'm sorry.
So for this particular, it sounds like it's an ongoing issue. I don't know if we want to go in this tonight. It sounds like it's a huge issue within this community. But what I have heard from Ed is for this subcommittee that you're going to make that a criteria. Okay.
Oh, hold.
Yes. I would like to know how many people in this room would like this issue taken to a covenant vote, mailed out to each lot owner tomorrow, so we could vote on it and not go through all of these committees and all of these smoke screens and all of these surveys. That's what I'd like to know. How many people would like to vote on this issue to a covenant?
So there's sort of a testing of y'all's interest. Okay. There's a gentleman over here. I really need to get over to this side, and then I'll come back around again.
Did you?
So y'all are raising your hands for an immediate vote tomorrow.
She's.
My name.
Okay.
I'm sorry. My name is Miriam Fader, and I'm a 10-year resident. One of the issues now, we have a very large population here. We know exactly how many lot owners there are. Now, I think this has gotten very slippery, and I don't see a lot of transparency here because there have been variances given because the little kids cried and they wanted chickens. I mean, this to me is very messy. In order to draft new language for a covenant, which is very, very legal, I think we're taking this very lightly because if A happens, then B might happen. I want to know what the rules are. In a sense, what do the guidelines for covenant change say? How many, there could be 3 people that bring something to the board, and there are a couple of thousand homeowners. Where do we stand here?
Got you. Yeah, that's a good question. I've described it as like amending the U.S. Constitution, and it takes years and years, right? So the rules on how a covenant gets changed is this. There have to be yes votes. No, let me back up. More than half of all the lot owners have to vote yes. Period. And in other words, opponents don't even have to vote if say there are 2,800 lots, there would be 1,401 yes votes for a covenant change to be approved. Oh. 2,800 roughly. Yeah. Well, the answer is, I don't know the answer. I don't know how many people. Can you let me answer? I'm going to answer the question, and I'd like some respect for the other people in the room that want an answer. Okay. I consider it to be a sizable enough number based on the communication that I've gotten, that there is serious interest in people having the ability to keep hens. That's what.
You're going to do the survey. You're going to
Yeah.
continue with this process so you get your arms.
Yeah.
And this committee's got to wrestle exactly with that. To this gentleman over here.
My name is Dave Carroll. I'm a member of your community here. I'm also a homeowner and a lot owner here. I have gone through their process and had 2 variances. One's for my dogs to have a little bit bigger fence line. I have a 2-part question. Part of it was asked by this nice lady before me. What exactly does it take to get the covenants changed? And we all, every single one of us, signed a release of what we would and would not agree to live in this community. I'm from Santa Fe. I grew up in Santa Fe. When I was in high school, I dreamed of living in El Dorado for one reason. I wasn't out in Galisteo. You want chickens? You agreed to move here under these covenants. Therefore, if you want to have chickens in a farm, I'm for it. Go out to Galisteo. It's only another mile down the road. You're all about it.
Do you feel like Ed's responded to what you need to do to get the covenant changed, or do you need to hear that? Okay. All right. To you, sir, but this.
All right. Can you tell me how many variances have been granted for chickens? Yeah. What's a handful?
I'm sorry, what?
Oh, how many variances have been granted for chickens?
You know, we had the sheet up here at the last forum.
I wasn't
3
here.
for hens. In the last 16 years, there were 3 for hens. There was also one for a hawk that was which died a couple of years ago. And
how many people applied for a chicken variance and were turned down?
I don't know that.
So everyone that applies, the 3 that applied, got
over the past 16 years.
Good. You're just trying to get your arms around the data
Okay.
to these 2 gentlemen, and then I'll head back over.
Okay.
Ed, if you conduct a survey and the overwhelming response is, we don't want a change, we don't want chickens or hens, would that be sufficient to not spend the money on the ballot, leave the covenants the way they are, and stop the variances?
That's a good question.
It's a good question.
I would answer this way. It would depend on what the spread was. I think that cuts both ways, and people would, I imagine, would be campaigning to get their voters out and all that stuff. But ultimately, I think why the board decided that it was most likely that there was going to be a covenant vote at the end of this process is simply because that is what gives finality to this thing. And, that's just the way it is.
My name is Marilyn Jacobs. I wanted to address the question I believe you asked about, somebody did, how many people definitively wanted chickens. I don't think it's that black and white. I do believe there's a continuum there. I can speak for myself. Paul and I don't really want chickens. We've talked about it. It's not something that we want, but I'm not necessarily against someone having chickens if there are parameters and specific guidelines that people follow. And there's a level of responsibility to the people that want chickens. And protect the animal and have the appropriate cages and all that stuff. So, I don't think it's that black and white. I can appreciate that people want fresh eggs. I've heard that many children appreciate the educational value of having chickens. So, there's a middle ground there. So I really don't think that we can be quite as definitive, because I do believe that there is a continuum, and I fall into that realm. So I just wanted to say that. So it's black and white of an issue, and the data isn't as easy to get your arms around as everybody would hope it sounds like. If you can speak and then I'll pass it on.
Okay. I'm Paul Jacobs. I'd like to just say the following. When we really don't know, we're all making assumptions. There are people making assumptions. It's only a small group of people that want chickens, and maybe that's the truth. And maybe, like my wife just said, there may be a big continuum somewhere along the line. My suggestion would be the same people that would be on the ad hoc committee, maybe that group should be moved up to more at the beginning of the process, so that there's a broad range of people putting the survey together and making sure that the survey is worded in a way where we do get that spectrum. Because you may have people who say, I don't want chickens, but I don't care if my neighbor has them. I personally don't care if my neighbor has chickens. I don't want them. But my neighbor's very responsible. But I know a woman down the street who can't keep her dog. And I would be really worried about her having chickens, because I don't know how responsible she would be. And there's a lot of people who probably fall into that continuum. So there might be people who say, I'm absolutely against it. There may be people who say, I'm in favor of it with certain conditions. And you may have a broad range of opinion. My suggestion would be to have a broad group of those people, that 12 that you talked about, or the baker's dozen. They should be the people that are involved, let's say, putting the survey together and following all the way through to the determination of should there be a ballot or not.
Yeah, good. Pass it on.
Another good process suggestion. I'm going to move on here.
Thank you. Excuse me.
One person speaking at a time.
Ed, I receive I'm sorry, my name is Eduardo Krasilovsky. I live in 17 Lucero Road, and I came here today because I received an email with 2 questions. I thought we were going to come here and give our answers to the 2 questions, and I have my answer here written, and I would like to read it.
Okay.
And also, I apologize for my voice and my throat. I have allergies. The questions that I received over the email said, more or less, what can be done to satisfy those who want hens as pets and as food security? And 2, what can be done to satisfy those who do not want a blanket approval of hens? Before I begin my answer, I want to say I don't want hens. I will not have them. But I am more concerned with facts, especially historical facts. So, the covenants do not prohibit or accept any particular animal, nor do they establish which animals are or are not accepted as pets in El Dorado, except for horses and maybe dogs. However, the covenants do require from those who have animals to comply with Article 2 of the covenants, Section 11 and 14, and with the building restrictions, obviously when it comes to the coops and the chicken run. Now about some facts. It is common knowledge that neighbors in El Dorado have had chickens, goats, and ducks, and other animals since as far back as the 1980s, or maybe even earlier. I personally know a young adult who grew up here on backyard eggs and goat milk. Therefore, the obvious but forgotten historical fact is that for the last 25 or more years, El Dorado's neighbors have had the freedom to keep hens and other animals. People have now and have had before animals without asking anybody to give them permission to have those animals. This freedom is by now intrinsic to El Dorado's culture, and it emanates from the covenants themselves, as they explicitly encourage our individual expression to be consistent with the historical traditions of the region. You can read that on Exhibit A of the covenants. Yes, we are in New Mexico, we are not in New York, which also allows for chicken, by the way. The city does in Manhattan. I think that our covenants have served our property and personal rights quite well and do not need to be changed on the issue of hens, ducks, or goats. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I just wanted to, thank you very much. I know that the original email that went out did frame some questions, and we were hoping during the open forum that if folks want to respond to those, that would be great. We did get some feedback that people didn't want to be limited just to those two questions. So if you do have a response there, we would love to hear it. If you want to be talking about things outside of that, we're also open to that. That was the reason why I got a little confusing. So apologize.
Let me explain that. The ECIA does not have a foolproof way of communicating by email to its residents, and so what we rely on is rosters of committees and committee chairs and people who we know are leaders in organizations, and that's the way it was disseminated. And so it's not perfect. It's like the vistas. It's like the website. We're not the New Mexicans, so you know there isn't a story every day. But let me tell you what the nature of the questions were. We thought that that we would pose a question asking what would you do if your side lost? If you want everybody to have the ability to have hens, and if it fails, what would you do in order to satisfy your desire to have fresh eggs and an educational experience for your children? On the other side,
You guys let him one at a time. I'll just finish what those were, and then we'll hear.
Yeah. On the other side, if the proposal were to pass and hens were allowed, if everybody were allowed to have hens, with whatever guidelines were appropriate, how would the opponents deal with it? What would they do in order to accommodate that change? And what we thought was that would be a good, rich basis for having a discussion about what your underlying interests are. If all you want is a vote, you can have a vote, but it really doesn't give you any more information than what you walked in with.
Okay,
and so that's why we wanted and we felt we needed to have this educational component.
We were trying to build the forum for those discussions we're having right now. So
Yeah,
you can
so-
respond to those questions. You can bring your interest in any way you want or ask questions. Yes, to you, sir.
Yes, sir. My name is Jim Leitner. I'm a homeowner. I'm a pretty simple man. What do the covenants state, which you've already stated, as it regards chickens, hens, and livestock?
I don't have the entire text. Okay.
I think it says they're not allowed.
Well, it's Okay.
Okay, I actually have all the different documents. Amended and restated protective covenants in building. Okay. Section 11, household pets. Okay, no animals birds, or poultry. Do you want me to say comma every time there's a comma? Okay. I didn't say it was well written, but okay. No animals, comma, birds, or poultry shall be kept or maintained on any lot, comma, except recognized household pets, which may be kept thereon in reasonable numbers as pets for the pleasure and use of the occupants, but not for any commercial use or purpose. It is forbidden to permit dogs, so dogs are included in this, dogs to run at large in El Dorado, period. At all times, comma, dogs must be kept, comma, restrained and controlled by their owners in the manner described in the Santa Fe County Animal Control Ordinance, period. A maximum of 2 horses may be kept on any lot which has an area in excess of 3 acres and which has been properly designated, comma, pursuant to these covenants, comma, and, as a horse area on any recorded subdivision map or by majority vote of the Board of Directors, period. And then it says, a stable for such horses may be erected upon such lot. And then there's also a nuisance clause. If you think you got it. Okay, good.
If that's the case, what do the covenants say about changing the covenants?
There.
Why don't you clarify that again?
Yeah, well,
If
there,
the covenants,
there,
if
there
the
is
covenants say that, what do the covenants say about changing the covenants, like making an amendment to the Constitution?
Yeah.
What does the covenants say?
The covenants say.
Clarify that one more time. Go ahead.
Yeah,
And
the
clarify
covenants say that the covenants can be changed if more than 1/2 of all of the lot owners vote yes. It's not just of all those that vote, it's all lot owners. We're
my question had to do with the Sandy Wallace, and my question has to do with the variances that were given. Were they also in compliant with what says in the covenant that the outhouse is 15 feet away from the main house and is architecturally connected?
Okay, I don't know about that one.
The outhouse? Yeah, the outbuildings. Oh, outbuildings. That's. I don't know the specifics about the recent variances. I'm not sure. Well, it's yeah, it is. But
okay.
True fact.
That was my question also. Are we going to follow the covenants for fencing? Are we going to follow the covenants for a chicken coop to be an outbuilding? Is it going to be within the covenants? That was my question. I have an RV. I just spent a fortune putting in a garage for that RV because I followed the covenants. So I want to make sure that the covenants, all the covenants, are covered. And I think this is a hot button issue. And I'm only here. I don't know if I have a pro or con, but I want to know what's going to happen with fencing, what's going to happen with the building of an outcoop. You know, those are important. Those are what are important to me. And my second question is, are we going to have the ability when people start complaining about smells, about noise, are we going to be able to enforce those covenants? We don't enforce the covenants we have now.
Y'all are wanting to broaden the discussion to covenants in general. What sounds like a principle is you want some certainty around that.
Yeah.
Ed, do you want to respond, or should we just?
Well, I think it would be irresponsible to not do that. You know, the kind of the unwritten code is when in doubt, check with your neighbors, and you know, if you're doing something that is objectionable to your neighbors, I mean that's where the rules would start, and so there would have to be rules, yes. And enforced. And enforced.
And I'd just like to start off by thanking you for serving as president here and catching all these bricks and stuff. I recognize the high salary you get for this.
Okay. No need.
But I strongly suspect that given the requirements for passing a covenant, there will be no covenant change passed. Where does that put us in this ongoing chicken debate?
Boy, that's that's one of the questions that keeps me up at night, because as a result of this, I don't think it will ever be possible to go back before this process started, and I don't know what that means. What I mean to say is, I think it's true that people have had hens, but they've done it in a very quiet way because they probably knew that they were not authorized to have it, and so they did it in a way like, it seems kind of trite now, but I have called it the don't ask, don't tell policy. And as long as you didn't, no harm, no foul. So I think that's, yeah. But the reality is the reality that it's such a high bar to pass to change the covenants that everybody has to understand that.
Okay, I've got the mic. My name is Brian Cassidy. I live in El Dorado. And this entire process to me, first of all, I'd like to make a comment. This is the comment. This entire process to me seems like it's a classic case of the tail wagging the dog. We have covenants in place that should be enforced. Instead, the board has chosen to do something other than that. I don't know why, but they have. It seems to me also with this survey followed by a ballot, so far there hasn't been any representation of the restrictions that would be placed on raising chickens or goats in their yard. I echo this lady in front here who said there are no what about the architectural restrictions? What about the setbacks? What about the health considerations? Waste disposal, enforcement, and penalties. And you have not provided any information whatsoever about that. So my suggestion would be conduct the survey, and based on the survey, forget the ballot or go ahead with it, but conduct the survey, thumbs up or thumbs down, and then revert back to the original covenants as they stand with no variances, as Mr. Goldstein recommended.
I did want to, we do have our special guest over here. Let me just ask if you want to respond, and then I'll come back to you all. Just about the public health questions around chicken.
Yeah, we need specific.
Let's since we do have our guests here with some certain expertise, let's have a section of the time to talk about public health.
I have a quick question. I'm actually the person who brought it up in the last forum about that aspect not being adequately addressed, at least in my opinion. My concern stems from, in the last forum, one of the presentations was a lovely PowerPoint talking about showing pictures of chickens as pets, and they're cuddly and they're cute and they're soft, and you can buy chicken diapers. And I appreciate the time that went into that and the gentleman that expressed it. I don't necessarily agree with everything. My concern, because I know that salmonella, I know that salmonella is an issue, okay, especially for birth to 5, elderly, immune compromised. Can you talk a little bit more about chickens from the public health aspect that's educational?
Yeah.
There's your question.
Okay. So I'm Dr. Paul Edestad. I've been the state public health vet at the Department of Health for the last 17 years, since 1994. In that 17 years, I'd say we probably had 5 or 6 outbreaks of poultry-related salmonella. almost all of the cases that we've had, and again, these are people who are buying small baby chicks from feed stores and taking them home. Almost all the cases we've had have been, the median age of cases is 2 years. So it's small children. So this is what we do. This is one of the, I just wanted to show you, this is one of the posters that we've tried to get put in the feed stores. We've seen that this has been a public health issue. People buy baby chicks, a lot of them buy them at Easter time. They think they're cute, they let them run around in their kitchen, they let the kids snuggle with them, they clean them in their kitchen sink, and basically little baby chicks are potentially excreting salmonella in their stool, and so we have had a number of cases of small children getting salmonella. The issue though is, again, it's people who are keeping them inside. They're not washing their hands good enough. They're allowing small children to handle them, or immunocompromised people. What I haven't seen, though, and I haven't seen any cases of, is cases of salmonella related to poultry in people who aren't actually raising them and handling them. I haven't seen them in, we haven't had any cases in the neighbor.
Unless you're eating uncooked meat.
Yeah.
Which is a food safety.
Right.
Yeah, uncooked meat from the grocery store. And, you know, this, just be on the record, salmonellosis is very serious, but the species that can shed it and spread it are cattle, cats, dogs, horses, poultry, turtles, all reptiles. So you have to know your animal you're rearing, know the risks. If you're an organ transplant patient, if you're on chemotherapy, not a good idea probably to have a lot of different pets. Dr. Hamlin?
It's Dr. Heidi Hamlin. She's on the executive board of the New Mexico Veterinary Medical Association and has been a practitioner here for a number of years and does a lot with poultry and sheep and goats.
And I'm board certified in preventive medicine.
Good.
So.
We kind of, while we have these guys up here, if y'all don't mind, let's make sure we get some questions to them, and then we can go back to go around.
Yeah.
I'm sorry about that. Specific questions to our friends here.
I'm ignorant, so I'm going to ask this question. Here in El Dorado, we have a lot of bubonic plague. How do these animals affect bubonic plague?
Yeah, I mean, very minimally, I would think. I can see potentially, if, like you said, if you had somebody who had a lot of hens and wasn't taking care of them very well and had a big buildup of, you know, straw and such, where they weren't, you know, mucking out their hen coop a couple times a month or something, you could have a pretty big buildup where you'd have a concentration of rodents in that hen coop, and that would be a potential location where you may have an increased risk for plague or potentially for hantavirus also. But again, it's going to be that person who's actually there working on that hen coop who's going to be the person who's going to be at the increased risk, not the person down the road.
I've got a question here, and then I'm going to go to this.
One more thing on plague.
Sure.
And a big preventative for plague is anti-flea treatment to your dogs and cats. I think Paul can speak to that last case 2 years ago where children, an 8-year-old child died. So Paul, you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of our plague cases are people who allow their cats to roam and hunt and then let them come back into the house, or the dogs roam and hunt and find rodents that are sick with plague. They don't have any flea control. They allow them back into the house. They allow them to sleep on their bed, and the dogs and cats bring back fleas with plague on them back into the house, onto the bed, and they bite you or the children, and that's a lot of our cases of plague occur based on those risks. Yeah, yeah.
One question for you, and then I'm not sure if the second one is for you as well. Is there any incidence of avian flu here?
No.
Is there no chance for it to come
Again, the H5N1 bird flu has not, the one that has been in the paper, has not even been found in the Western Hemisphere of the world at all. So not in North America or South America.
Okay.
I mean, there's all kinds of different avian flu that affect poultry, but they make birds sick. They're not making people sick.
Okay. And one other question, it may not be for you. What would happen at release if we had them? Would they bring in other predators into the area more than we've got now?
Again, this is a management issue. If you were going to allow hens and they weren't properly managed, you allowed feed to be left out where you would attract rodents because of the feed. You didn't have them properly fenced where, like in the last situation that was mentioned, they're easy pickings for skunks or coyotes or stray dogs to come in, yeah, they're going to be attracted. So it's a management issue. How well are you managing your situation so that predators won't be attracted to the area?
Yeah, you have to net the top. The hawks will pick them off, or owls. Bobcats will climb over a fence very high, yeah. But I'm just saying that it's got to be like a 4-way enclosure, including the roof. Yeah. And we have some chicken netting that does that in parts of Santa Fe where I see a lot of chickens, because hawks and owls will come down.
Yeah. These are management issues, yeah.
Yes. Jim Knight from 53 Serrato Loop. My question also runs along the same train of thought, environmental impact on the introduction of a non-natural species such as chickens. And then what is the effect of the environment? We've talked about more aggressive behavior amongst carnivores. But what about, say, like our native bird populations, which many people like here, or the introductions of skunks, which do have a history of promoting rabies? And another one that maybe specifically as a veterinarian you can address, the risk factor of equine encephalitis for those horse owners around here with the introduction of chickens.
Good questions. I'm moving over this way. Go ahead and respond.
Yeah, I mean, we have, as we have West Nile virus in this state in our mosquito populations, and our horses are affected by that and do develop encephalitis from that, but they are not considered to be reservoir hosts, meaning they don't get enough virus in them where a mosquito can bite them and then pass it on to another person. They're considered to be dead-end hosts for that disease.
But wild birds and domestic birds can be hosts for those encephalitides, western, eastern, obviously western here and West Nile.
Sure.
So that's a possibility. I've only seen one case and I've been practicing 26 years.
I mean, we regularly have die-offs of the native bird species in people who are trying to do the right, who love birds. They have bird feeders, and the birds concentrate at the bird feeders, and native birds have salmonella, and then they contaminate the water, and all of a sudden you have 10, 20 birds in some person's backyard dying from salmonella. Well, that's naturally occurring in the wild birds that have salmonella. So those things happen all the time anyways.
And if you didn't wash your hands after cleaning out the bird bath, you too could acquire salmonella. So these are widespread risks. They're rare in their occurrence. Yeah. And proper hand washing is frequently the answer, and teaching your children to wash hands. Remember the old petting zoo days? Those days are gone. There's going to be a hand wash station and probably a paid person making sure your child washes his hands before he leaves the petting zoo. And that's for a very good reason.
Okay, got some questions here?
Yes, can you talk about the fungus histoplasmosis that can occur in chicken coops?
Right. Again, there's some fungal diseases like histoplasmosis, cryptococcosis, that if you have a buildup of bird feces, and this happens on top of roofs of buildings with pigeon feces. If it builds up high enough and it's moist enough, you can have a buildup of those fungal diseases. And if somebody goes in there then and cleans that up and creates an aerosol, that person can be at risk. So people who clean rooftops with pigeon droppings, they have to put on full protective equipment with respirators and stuff to do that, to prevent them from getting that. We don't really see histoplasmosis in this state because of how dry it is. So those fungal diseases don't really live that long. But the whole southern part of the state, if you go down to Las Cruces or up along the Rio Grande, almost up to Albuquerque, you're exposed to coccidioidomycosis, valley fever. Everybody who lives in the southern part of the state has already been exposed to a fungal disease very similar to histoplasmosis.
The people are concerned about some health risk. There's been a flyer put out, and they're concerned about infectious bronchitis, Newcastle disease, and Staphylococcus aureus spread by chickens. Is there any possibility of that? Danger?
Well, Newcastle's, again, that's a disease of birds, transmitted bird to bird. So there are a number of diseases that are not what we call zoonotic diseases that animals don't give to people. Newcastle's a disease that potentially, if it was introduced, would pass bird to bird. Now, Dr. Hamlin actually worked on the huge Newcastle disease outbreak in California. And infectious bronchitis, again, is another disease that's just bird to bird. Now, Staph aureus, staph infection, every single person in here, if you swab your skin, you have staph on you. That's everywhere.
Just my question is, how many of these type diseases and things like that are airborne enough so if my neighbor is somewhat less than taking care of their stuff, how much of that can just float right over to my house, which I have no choice because...
Right. In terms of the hens, I looked into this. I don't think any in terms of hens.
What about the goats then?
Here you go.
As I said, there's about 150 zoonotic diseases. Some of them are aerosol. The main aerosolized agents in rearing goats are going to be due to large numbers of female goats kidding, and they are sick with the agent. For instance, Q fever, Coxiella burnetii. That agent they're usually aborting. You have a problem, veterinarians are usually involved, and the placentas and the birth fluids are in the dirt. And when that dirt dries, it can blow. And there have been outbreaks in California of neighbors of large, we're talking 300-400 goats, kidding, and also in cattle too, cattle facilities. And it's usually due to abortions. This is one of the many zoonotic diseases that when we educate livestock owners, we don't recommend that they do things barehanded, that they take care, pick up placentas, get rid of the birth fluids, bag them, don't let dogs have access to them. So again, it's hygiene. And all those outbreaks can be prevented with good hygiene and management.
So possibly 20 of my neighbors could have 4 goats each, and now I've got the same problem that a commercial...
If they're all kidding and they have the disease Q fever, which usually means they're aborting. Okay. So it's not something they carry generally asymptomatically. Yeah.
I would like to know if you could address the risk factor in comparing dogs and hens, mainly because we have lots of dogs here. And when I went to the CDC website, I learned that 4 million Americans and correct me please, are sent every year to the emergency room because of dog bites. So do you have any knowledge, and we don't have forums about dogs, can you, I don't know if you have the knowledge available right now in comparing the risk factors of becoming sick from dogs and from half a dozen hens in 50 homes.
Right. So in the last 6 years, we've had 16 people develop salmonella from poultry, that we know they got it from poultry. And how we know that is we work with the hatcheries, and when they get salmonella in their chickens, we do DNA fingerprinting on it. When we get human cases of salmonella, we do DNA fingerprinting on it, and we match them up. And we have nationwide outbreaks because these hatcheries sell birds all over the country. So when we match all those up, we know that we have an outbreak due to chickens. So 16 people in 6 years in New Mexico. Luckily, none of them have died. Every year in this state, we probably treat about 60 to 80 people with rabies vaccine to prevent them from getting rabies, and a lot of those are due to dog bites from stray dogs that we don't know whether they have rabies or not. And since rabies is a 100% fatal disease, we don't want to mess around. And so typically the average cost for medical costs and everything put together, you can look in the literature, is about $3,000 to $4,000 per person when we have to treat them for a dog bite. So.
And I just have one quick comment. All of these animals, it's a really good question, because it's all based on your personal hygiene and the hygiene of your management practices. So not picking up dog feces on the green belts is a hazard. It's a hazard to other dogs in case that feces contains parasites that are transmissible. It's a hazard to children because there are some parasites of dogs and cats that can affect children. Again, young children, old folks, immunosuppressed, organ transplants, chemotherapy, those are the high risks. So any animal you have, whether it's a parakeet, a pet rat, can pose a risk, but it's minimal and they're rare, and most of it's preventable by good hygiene.
Hey, do more. Yes, I'm sort of wanting hand sanitizer.
But these are really rare. I mean, they're really rare. But if you're the N of 1, if it happens to you, it's not so rare.
Yes, sir. Sorry.
So, just what I've gathered from what you have to say, if there were hens on people's personal properties with this kind of density, of a very limited number. Yes. And they were managed, relegated well.
Yes.
And there was important regulations that would maintain that, and people would be educated and do that. What would you say the level of danger for neighbors and for people who had them be at the levels that we're talking about? 5, 6 hens in a yard.
Right.
With proper
The risk to neighbors, people who aren't actually handling the animals, is extremely low. Yeah. But again, I mean, the people who actually have them, and when you bring in new baby chicks, it's the new baby chicks that are ones that are more likely to be excreting salmonella. Once they grow up, they don't excrete it as often anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, just this is sort of a follow-up to the, this is a follow-up to the management issue. You keep talking about management. So say we allowed people to have chickens, half a dozen or a dozen, whatever. What would you recommend in terms of monitoring the management? Okay, how often, how frequently? Are there any, and currently, are there any laws that cover that?
Not that I know of. However, good animal management, whether it's your dog or cat, we could have parameters set forth, and I'd be happy to help the committee as far as you could have inspections quarterly or whatever. But most people that own chickens, and I see a lot of chickens in Santa Fe, and every town I've lived in has been able to have chickens. Davis, California, I just left. I had chickens on both sides of me. It drove my cat nuts, okay, because he was trying to be in his yard and the chickens were pecking at him. But they were in a 4-sided enclosure. He couldn't get to them. They couldn't get to him, okay? So the bottom line is that we could set up parameters. We could have, I worked the Newcastle disease outbreak in LA in 2002, and we had about 1,200 people from state and federal agencies out there, and I went in thousands of backyards, and I saw what some of these coops look like, and it's not pretty. So you have to have very strict covenants about the size, the building materials, you know, you have to be very specific because people will throw stuff together, and pretty soon you're going to be decreasing your property values, as the gentleman mentioned. I would say that the livestock owner would, usually.
I want to state again, I'm not for or against this.
No, I'm not either.
I'm just, yeah.
Got one more question, and I think we'll thank our wonderful guests here and just open up for general comments in the last minute.
I have no position either.
My name's Nancy Palmer. I've been here for almost 11 years. I'll state right from the beginning, I am pro-chicken. But is there a vaccination against salmonella for chickens?
No, there is not a commercial vaccine. Now, our hatchery in the state that had a salmonella problem went to a company and had their own salmonella vaccine manufactured for their own salmonella that they have on their hatchery. And it's helped to reduce the amount of salmonella. It hasn't eliminated it. It's really difficult to get rid of it. One last thing I want to say is by statute, and I don't want to get into the argument, but by statute, poultry are livestock. And so they fall under the livestock code, and they fall under the jurisdiction of the New Mexico Livestock Board. So if there is an outbreak of avian influenza or something in your area, and the livestock board comes by and says, you know, we need to kill all the chickens because we want to prevent bird flu from spreading, that's their jurisdiction. They have that jurisdiction to do that. So realize that your poultry falls under the livestock code. Yes, goats.
Actually, in the Newcastle outbreak, all birds fell under that, and we put quarantines. We tried not to kill the $20,000 toucans and whatnot, but we had a full-bore quarantine. If you want to read about the thing that happened in LA, and how did that get into our country? Probably through illegal importation of smuggled infected fighting cocks, as in roosters fighting. Okay, so that was where we determined our highest risk was.
Okay, we've got a few more questions.
And I'm neither for or against this either, but I am a resident and I do care about my property values.
Couple more questions.
Yeah, I want to ask the gentleman, my name is Bob Johnson. You indicated that
into the mic.
That hens and I'm sorry, that hens and roosters are, did you say livestock?
Poultry, if you look at the statutes under the livestock code, by statute, they are poultry. Yeah, there's a whole list. This is what livestock is considered. It's the definition, so that these rules and regulations fall under Yeah, poultry is listed as livestock.
So legally, this is livestock, not pets.
In the livestock code, yes.
Yeah, but that's a state.
Well, I'm not saying that they can't be pets too. I'm just telling you that they're classified in the livestock code as that. So when there's some disease condition or something, the livestock board does have some jurisdiction.
Well, happily Webster's does define pets.
Okay.
And it tells us that pets are not livestock.
Okay. This is a crossword puzzle. Did you have a question for the gentleman?
You can have a pet cow.
No.
But the cow is livestock.
Oh.
Yeah. I don't know. You have to get a lawyer for that. I'm just
okay, I want to
pass my pay grade.
I'm going to thank our esteemed guests here, you all. That was really helpful. That was great. Thank you so much for your time and being a part of this. Yeah, I'm a little creeped out, but it was very helpful. We still have a half hour, and I know folks still have comments for the record. And I had pulled the mic from her, so I have to go here, and then I'll come back around to y'all.
Okay, I'm Dolores Brock, and I would like to just respond to the gentleman who said that from the beginning there were chickens on this place. There were not. I've lived here since 1974, and there were chickens maybe in the early 80s, very sparse, and it was at that time, don't ask, don't tell. And I think, personally, I think that's the way it should stay. Don't ask, don't tell. But there were not chickens. This was never designed to be a sustainable community.
Thank you. I got to move around to some of these folks. Excuse me. Let me go to you, and then we'll pass it to you.
Okay.
Hey, you guys, let's all focus. If you can hang in there a little bit longer, so folks still want to be heard.
Yeah, Nancy Palmer again. When we first moved here,
Please pay.
Y'all, if you want to, if it's ready to adjourn, we can, but if folks are speaking, we have to turn out.
our neighbors, when we first moved here, our neighbors across the street had chickens. We had no idea they did until we went over there and met them. But when we moved here, we needed a shed for some of our gardening equipment, and we needed an enclosure for our cats to keep them safe. So we had to go in front of the board, and there were requirements for our shed. It did not have to be stuccoed. It did not have to be New Mexico style. We got it from Sears, and it was right. But we had to have it at least 25 feet from our neighbor's property line, and there were other requirements. They preferred it not to be visible. So I am sure that a chicken coop would also have similar requirements, that it would be 25 feet from a neighbor's property line and would blend in. So that is not a worry that it has to follow the architectural requirements.
Let's pass it on to
Hi, I'm Diane Thomas. My husband and I have been lot owners in El Dorado for 4 years and homeowners and residents for 3. We are talking about hens or chickens tonight. One thing we have not talked about that I think is really key to this issue is how many. Has the board or any entity set any maximum number of chickens that people could keep if it is passed?
I can't give you a specific number. I think 15 is a number that has been put out there on the basis of acreage. It's an acreage formula. I don't know.
Okay, we've got
But I don't think that's in any proposal yet.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
I'm Rosemary Lowe with Eco El Dorado. I'm losing my voice. I do want to just give you all the preamble to the covenants. It says, ECI covenants are for the express purposes of protecting the natural beauty and environment of the community of El Dorado at Santa Fe, providing an attractive rural setting for residential neighborhoods, home sites, and preserving property values. I do want to reiterate, I'm in animal protection work. I've investigated cruelty cases that would curl your hair and probably make you sick to your stomach, so I won't mention them.
I'm kind of freaked out enough already.
Well, no, friends, we need to face realities. We can talk about all the ideals here, about how everybody's going to follow the law and they're all going to do the right thing. We don't as humans. We don't. We are in trouble in New Mexico, those of you who've moved here. We have one of the highest rates of cruelty to animals, including livestock. The Livestock Board cannot handle all the cruelty investigations. There were just 100 horses in Los Lunas that had to be destroyed, shot, because people were starving them to death at the auction. Now, I just want to share with you one thing. Eco El Dorado is concerned not because of sustainability, which is a buzzword. It's a buzzword by Michael Pollan just to continue to push backyard livestock, which includes backyard slaughter in many places in the country. Our concern as a group is the environment. The wildlife here have a right to be here as well. We do not want the wildlife blamed when chickens get out, as they will, and they disappear. We keep our cats in, and we keep them in for a reason. We have hawks, we have coyotes, and we have lovely bobcat, and we should protect them as well. So if you're interested, you can go to ecoeldorado.org, and I thank you.
You got your voice back.
My voice.
It's sustained for you. Yes, ma'am, and then I'm heading over to you folks.
Yeah, Mary Cassidy again. My husband and I have lived here for 18 years. The good doctors spoke at length about the necessity for keeping the level of muck in the chicken coops down, having the correct type of coops built, and having responsible owners of chickens. So the question that I have is, if you allow chickens, who is going to police these people? Who is going to make sure? Are we willing to pay for a covenant officer? And if we have to pay for additional covenant officers, all of us who do not want chickens will be subsidizing those who have them.
Ed, is there something you want to respond to that at this point? Yeah.
No, I would say that has to be part of the equation. It has to be factored in.
I just want to go back to the covenant for a moment, sorry. With that famous sentence about no animals, birds, or poultry shall be kept or maintained on any lot except recognized household pets, which may be kept, blah, blah, blah. My guess is that you could find people who would call any animal that exists on the face of the earth a pet. Somebody has a pet elephant, somebody has a pet emu, and my concern is we're talking about chickens now, and in the little blurb that was out on the website about people wanted chickens for food and whatnot, or secure food, well, suppose next week, you know, since I want beef with no antibiotics and whatnot, I need a cow on my place so I can have beef that doesn't have antibiotics. This is just the tip of the iceberg, and I just want to make one other comment. Webster's dictionary defines pets, okay? And it says that they are a domesticated animal kept for pleasure rather than utility. And there's several other definitions along those lines. And I also want to say that in there it says recognize. Go back for the, somebody help me. Recognized
okay? Household pets.
So recognized, I looked that up, and that's something that is generally accepted, that people generally think. Okay, so I'm hoping we're not going to have elephants and whatnot. And I think, yes, somebody might have had a pet chicken or a pet emu or a pet cow, but I think generally accepted is like cats, dogs, a bird in a cage in the house.
Good, thank you. Yes, sir, will you?
Hello, my name's Chris Croggy. My wife and I are lot owners here. Just two quick comments. One, you have a survey going out, and it's going out by email as well as in the Vista. A lot of us didn't get the email for the last survey. How do we make sure that you have our emails so that we can take part in the survey?
Well, the survey isn't necessarily going to be sent by email. The idea is that it would be put on the website, and that there would be.
When will we know that it's on the website then?
That would be on the website too.
So just keep checking the website every day.
No, our communication method doesn't allow for fast action, and frankly, until very recently, it wasn't deemed important for us to have people's emails addresses. Now, you wonder in this day and age how people communicate with that kind of a system. We have been getting people's emails. I don't know, maybe have 20% now of the community, 20-30%, and so that would be an effort of its own, without getting into too many details. But what was I going to say? Watch the website, and there will be something in the vistas.
I did the Vistas
well.
about a month late, so that won't do me much good.
And not only that, the Vistas is prepared 2 months ahead of time before you get it in your mailbox.
Yeah, my other follow-up is just that I don't think 15 chickens is a pet. It's a flock. It's a whole different issue.
Yeah.
So it sounds like one of the ongoing themes, and maybe that this subcommittee needs to wrestle with, is how to have a legitimate mechanism for communication around this, so that you really do have have as much input as possible from the community. To you?
In the notes from one of the last meetings, ECIA board meetings, on the website, I did notice that someone had expressed concern about how do you monitor, like people taking a survey, how do you monitor it's one vote per household, per lot?
Yeah.
And my concern, what I saw on there is you were checking there would be one internet provider address per vote. I mean, for example, I've got 3 email addresses.
Yeah.
So I could go on there and vote 3 times, and you're going to consider that valid, and that's not valid.
Yeah.
That's my concern.
Yeah, I can address that quickly. I think we ran into that in the very first survey that we attempted, and we realized it was a bomb because of that. So what we did in the amenity survey, we put a mandatory box where you put your address, no name, but your address, and we figured that would reduce the risk of that substantially. Well, you could put your name, but we wanted it to be. We could, but I. Right. Yeah. Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. We got a few more folks, and then we're going to.
Yes. No, it's not going to be created tonight. If we have to talk about it in the board and how to make that work, and so that's going to take a couple of weeks.
I'm Marilyn Jacobs. As a founding member of SIRA, the Sustainable El Dorado Residents Alliance, I just want to say, in terms of a definition of sustainability, someone mentioned that El Dorado was not designed for sustainability. Sustainability is basically about being in harmony with nature to guarantee the future generations, and so that we all are working in harmony with nature. And that's an essential definition, really, of what sustainability is. And I think it gets misconstrued. People manipulate it for their own end. So I just want to make that clear. Sarah's position, by the way, has always been just for hens. It's never been about livestock. It's not about smoke marijuana and you're going to be a heroin addict tomorrow. So I think we need to, let's not worry about having elephants and cows, and we're just dealing with hens. Okay, having said that, someone did mention about enforcement. I had a question about that. Let's assume, like you said, Ed, that it goes to covenant vote and there aren't enough people, so we're kind of back to where we started from, but we're really not back to where we started from because so many issues have been raised about this. So I guess, would the ad hoc committee then, assuming that that happens, okay, and I have a feeling that's probably what's going to happen. So we're back to guidelines, and this committee establishing some really stringent guidelines, and I do agree 15 is, in my opinion, that's too many. I'm thinking 3, 4, would be manageable for people, and I do have a concern about the responsibility of the owners. And I do have a concern about people, somebody talked about animal cruelty, very much an advocate for that personally. So that's a concern I have. So how would, that's a major deal. How would that be monitored? If someone comes to the board and says, I want to have chickens, then would you, like we have to do for a solar system. You guys want to check and see it's solar. So you want to see, is it on the roof right? How does it affect your neighbors? Blah, 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 even though.
That would all have to be worked out.
Do you know what I'm saying? So what would the board then, if there's some specific guidelines for somebody who wants to have chickens and they prove themselves to be responsible because somebody from Mark Young's committee or something goes out and says, all right, here's where the coop's going to be and here's the design and it's approved, so that there is some oversight. And I do understand the anti-chicken people. They're concerned for that. It's a concern I have as well.
Okay. I tell you what, I saw hands get up there. My concern right now is that there are a few people that haven't said a thing tonight, and I want to make sure I get to them before we run out of time, and then and then we'll see where we're at.
If somebody would like to see animal going wild, if they drive up Almeida, right up to where this circle is at the end of Siler, the new part of it, you'll find that somebody there in their front yard has got 4 or 5 cows. They started off with about 2, and they have 4 or 5 now. I grew up on a beautiful dairy farm, which was always clean, always correct. And to me, it's abusive what these animals in, the slime, the muck, and everything else. I don't know how they got them in over there. That's certainly in the middle of a community, of a residential community. And my husband and I ride around and range around. We've antique cars, and we're always going up and down the road, seeing if everything's working right. And we always walk a lot, too. And I see dog people all over the place with huge dogs, with all this stuff they're leaving. They'll look right at you, and they do not remove it. It's there. And they don't care. They look right at you, and they go on their way. And we don't really like that because we walk along. And personally, I think it's insulting to all the covenant-abiding lot owners that some people sign a document agreeing to covenants and then put their personal agendas above all else.
Okay, there are a lot of people who are wanting to speak that have already spoken. We're really down to the last 5 minutes, so I want to make sure that the folks who haven't spoken get a chance.
Hi, I'm Scott M. Smith, and I'd like the board to elaborate on this proposed co-op land secured for cows, goats, and perhaps other livestock, and how that would contribute to sustainability.
I guess it's just a question that still needs to be
Yeah,
Who else has
I'm not an expert on the ins and outs of sustainability, but the ideas have been floated that there that for those purposes that there would be designated where a cooperative could have a couple of cows or more that they would be responsible for tending. Now there are kind of some proxies out there. There's a rancher, maybe some of you participate in this program up on Glorieta Mesa, who raises grass-fed beef, and it's part of a cooperative type thing, and a lot of people here in El Dorado eat the best beef that you can find. And so there are a lot of creative ideas that I hope that we'll have a chance to explore in the coming years, and that's the best I can do.
Yeah, I have two comments. This is Steve Van Cooteren. I don't understand the last comment about if the issue is denied through a covenant vote, it gets voted down, how you can go to guidelines then. That's just against what the covenant vote was for. Second thing is, the toothpaste is out of the tube with Syrah. On their website, they advocate El Dorado Food Network and community gardens and livestock. So don't say that. It's on the website, and the toothpaste is out of the tube.
Marilyn.
Okay, this gentleman over here has been very patient with me. Okay.
Okay.
Just 2 points. One, if we're talking about sustainability, this process started in February. February. The
Okay, listen up, everybody.
From what I heard, this process really started in February of this year. The whole issue of solar energy in the community has been mulled over and researched for years now. There's never been any comment or any concern about changing the covenant about that. Why all of a sudden we going through a covenant change for chickens?
Mm-hmm.
What pushed that along? I don't quite get the connection there. And two, it seems we got the horse before the cart. Maybe we should have the guidelines set up before we even consider taking any change of the covenant. How can we change a covenant if we don't know what the guidelines will be?
Yeah, that's the classic chicken and the egg question.
Yeah.
Because
is anybody else not spoken that it has? Okay, so I promised I'd come back to her, and I'm afraid she'll be very mad at me. I'm a little frightened.
I want to take it back to this. We are a subdivision.
Listen up, please.
Our homes here. We all purchased our homes here in a subdivision with covenants. You can live anywhere in this beautiful state that you want except a subdivision and have poultry and livestock. So why live in a subdivision? There are about 40 people that want to have poultry and livestock in El Dorado, and they're putting this whole community through all of this. And I know our board has no intention of taking it to a covenant vote. You are going to do guidelines. You're going to take a board vote on this, and you're going to do guidelines and force this on us. I know that's what your plan is, and you have no intention, or you would have just taken this. You complained about the expense of doing a covenant vote when you could have included it in the annual report envelope for free, and we could have had an up or down vote on it. But this is a subdivision. Don't try and nullify our covenants. Don't try and get us to think your way. We purchased our homes here. We want to keep our property values up. We don't want to live next to poultry and livestock. And if you do, then you can live outside of a subdivision.
Okay, we've got 2 more comments, and then we're going to wrap it up.
Is it your intention or the board's intention to hold a ballot vote without first establishing guidelines?
That's the chicken and the egg.
Well, answer the question.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'm talking specifically about the guidelines that will regulate chickens.
Well, that's the chicken and the egg question. Yeah, I think we will get a lot of information by some dialogue with this committee, this ad hoc committee, if it's created. I think that in good faith, there should be some kind of framework for regulation. I wouldn't call it a guideline because it's not in the process of creating a guideline. So I would call it maybe candidate regulations or some kind of terminology that expresses how these would be regulated. And it wouldn't, they would not, I would insist that they would not be automatically carried forward if the thing were to pass. They would have to start over. If the question passed, they would have to start over to actually write guidelines, because we don't even know really what the covenant change would be. I think it makes sense to give them a good idea of what those are. Example, samples.
Thank you. I know everybody's worried about the property values, so I went and did some research. Took me a lot of time, and I compare 5 cities.
Listen up, people.
I compare 5 cities and towns because basically what happened is that I read the statement. The statement says 7 out of 10 cities on Forbes magazine's most desirable cities list for the list of those cities for 2010 allow backyard chickens. So I said, wait a minute, maybe this is wrong, or whoever put that together. So here we go.
Please, let him finish.
I'm going to give you the names of the cities, 4 of them, the median house value, the median income of the city, and here they go. Hillsborough, California, the median house value is over $1 million, $1.5 million. The median income is over $200,000, and they allow chicken. Los Altos, California, again, the median house value is 1.4 million, and the median income is $183,000. El Dorado, New Mexico, median house value $400,000, median income $89,000. Atherton, California, $2.4 million per house, up to $4 million. Over $2 million median income. They all allow chicken. They have guidelines for chicken.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. No. Okay. Okay, so one of the things you... Okay, so... All right, y'all. Okay. He's just presenting his perspective and brought some data to it. You don't have to completely take it. Okay, we've got this gentleman, then we're going to wrap it up, y'all.
Ed, Rich Goldstein. I think if we have the ballot, I disagree with Brian just a little bit. If we have the ballot and it's voted down, and so that you cannot have poultry in El Dorado, then you don't need to go to the guidelines. And if it passes by some chance that they get on your 2,800, 14,001 yes votes, then you develop the guidelines. It seems to me to be the cart before the horse if you're going to do guidelines first.
Thank you. That's the
right.
That's the way I wish I would have explained it. Thank you.
I'm going to turn it over to Ed. I do want to thank you all. I really do feel like these policy issues are really hard. You guys did a wonderful job here today. They're iterative, they're messy. I appreciate your forbearance. Let me give Ed the final words.
I really don't have anything more to say. Thank you. Thank you very much. This has been a real eye-opening experience. And sincerely thank you for your participation.